Good morning. Welcome to RBKC's Licensing Subcommittee, and thank you for attending. This hearing is being live streamed. I think only the audio, right, is going to be live streamed. Okay. I must apologize. I have laryngitis, but I didn't want to miss the hearing, so I might have to hand over in the middle, but I am here. I'm Councillor Janet Evans, and I will be chairing this meeting. The committee has this hearing, for this hearing, comprises Councillor Laura Burns, Councillor Abdullahi Noor, and me. We are joined by Paul Phelan from the Council's licensing team and our legal officer, Lindsay Lemasurier. Also with us are our committee officers, Holly Weaver, Jerome Treherne, and Nimka Mahoudin. Before we start the hearing for this case, just a few ground rules. Please keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak, as only 2 microphones can be used at any one time. Please make sure your mobile phones are on silent. Thank you. The case before us today is to vary a license for Kung Fu, 180 to 182 Earls Court Road, London, SW5. Now for declarations of interest. I confirm that I have no declaration of interest to make regarding this item. Do other members have any declarations to make? Councillor Burns?
No declarations, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Noor?
No declaration of interest.
Thank you, colleagues. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of the meeting, which has already been circulated with the papers. First, the licensing officer, Mr. Phelan, will give a brief outline of the application. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Good morning, Chair. Paul from Licensing.
Thank you. Then the applicant's legal advisor, Mr. Jonathan Smith, to present his submission. He will have up to 10 minutes. He is joined by his client, Yikun Han, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Please, could you all confirm your attendance?
Yes, Councillor, I'm here. I'm Jonathan Smith.
Thank you. Then questions may be asked by members of the committee and the legal officer of the applicant. Then questions may be asked by the objectors of the applicant. Next, the objectors. Mrs. Philippa Seabohm, on behalf of Earls Court Village Residents Association, Ms. Karen Fawcett, and Ms. Nuria Sabine will present their objections.
Councillor Wade as well.
Councillor Wade, you are here, I see.
Can you just get her to confirm she's speaking on behalf of Councillor?
Are you speaking on behalf of Councillor Tim Verboven?
Yes, and the Nevern Square Conservation Area.
Thank you. Then questions may be asked by members of the committee and the legal officer of the objectors. Then questions may be asked by the applicant of the objectors. After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Lemasurier, to deal with any questions she may have, and then she will lead on the draft conditions session. The list of potential conditions has been circulated to all of the parties prior to the hearing. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Lemasurier, to deal with any questions she may have, and then she will lead on the draft conditions session. The list of potential conditions has been circulated to all of the parties prior to the hearing. Please, could you confirm your attendance?
Present, Chair.
Then finally, we will turn to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up, and the meeting will end. I would like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers which comprise the main pack and the additional submissions that have been circulated to the parties. So there is no need to repeat their content, please. But please do draw our attention to certain points and pages. Let's now get going. Mr. Phelan, please can you outline the case for us and advise if there has been any additional documentation received?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. Today we have an application from HW Kensington Management Limited for a premises license variation at Kung Fu, located at 180 to 182 Elscourt Road, London, SW5 9QG. Currently, the premises trade with a premises license which permits indoor late-night refreshment and a sale of alcohol on the premises within the basement area only. A copy of the current license has been attached at Appendix A. Details of the precise changes proposed as part of this application have been included on pages 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Unfortunately, Chair, due to a technical issue regarding page 8 of the original report, an amended page 8 which clarifies the current hours for the basement was circulated to relevant parties yesterday. For reference, a copy of the variation application is attached as Appendix B, with a copy of the proposed plan attached at Appendix C. The application for a premises license variation at Kung Fu did not receive any objections from the responsible authorities. However, it did receive 25 representations which opposed the application. A summary of the concerns raised can be found on pages 10 and 11, with full copies attached at Appendix D. The planning department has been consulted, however no response was received. Additionally, Chair, there have been 4 noise complaints and 13 temporary event notices submitted in the past 24 and 12 months respectively. Details of the complaints are included at Appendix E, with a summary of the temporary event notices included at Appendix F. As requested, Chair, I can confirm that the following additional documents were circulated to relevant parties. At the request of the applicant, the case of Matthew Taylor and Manchester City Council, particularly referencing paragraph 77, an email to local councillors dated the 21st of March 2024, an email to Residents Association and local councillors on the 10th of April, an email to local residents associations and local councillors on the 15th of April. A copy of the letter circulated to local residents prior to the application being issued, and which was subsequently sent to local residents associations and local councillors under the cover of an email dated the 10th of April. This was sent with the following attachments: a draft application, a dispersal policy, an acoustic report, and a table detailing the existing hours and proposed hours, a dispersal policy, and an acoustic report prepared by KP Acoustics, issued on the 8th of March 2024. Additional documents requested by licensing was the amended page 8 that I referred to earlier in my statement. That concludes a summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Phelan. Now for the applicant's case, Mr. Smith, please can you advise if there have been any amendments to your application?
The only change, councillors, is I think there were some discussions between my office and your officers as to whether the ground floor, which is the entrance foyer effectively, should be included within the licensed area. That should not be included within the licensed area, so we do not wish to request any sale of alcohol or late night refreshment for the ground floor. It's a small area as you walk in, councillors, to the restaurant. That is the only amendment, and I have spoken to Paul about that, councillors.
Sorry, can I just jump in here? Sorry, so the ground floor, you're not seeking to extend the licensing area from the basement to the ground floor. Isn't there a restaurant on the ground floor?
So there is, but there's no sale of alcohol up there, and that will not be used after 11 p.m, so we wouldn't need any permission for late night refreshment.
Okay, so just continue as is. So
No additional area.
No on sales of alcohol and no late night refreshment for the ground floor. Okay,
Correct.
I can know that. Thank
We
you.
need it to be open, I guess, because people need to get out of that way.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. You now have 10 minutes to present your submission, please.
I will do my best, councillors, and I'll rush through as best I can.
We're counting.
It's an application, very simply. You've already got the details in your papers, but effectively it's an extra hour sought for late night refreshment and alcohol for the public restaurant, and 2 hours for the 3 function rooms. an extra 2 hours for the karaoke room and function rooms as well, councillors, and it's all in your table. And there's also a summary that I provided in the letter to the local residents, which provides the summary of what we were seeking. We're also asking for regulated entertainment in the karaoke rooms only, nowhere else, councillors. We don't have any regulated entertainment at the moment, till 11:30 Sundays, midnight, Monday to Wednesday, and 2 o'clock on a Thursday to Saturday. There's quite a long history to this application. I don't think I've ever done such a long pre-consultation before submitting it. On the 19th of October, we met with your officers. Can you hear me all right, councillors? I keep cutting out. Can you hear me all right? We met with your officers, councillors, on the 19th of October, both licensing and public protection, for a pre-application meeting. We then issued a total of 32 days to be covered by temporary event notices. That included Christmas period, the New Year period, also the Chinese New Year period. We tried to arrange meetings with local residents. I know on the 29th of November, Councillor Wade was not able to attend that meeting. It was only attended by one resident, so we arranged a further meeting with residents on the 8th of January. On the 12th of January, we received an email from Councillor Wade asking for a lot of additional information about the safety of the works that had been done. We submitted a minor variation to have the plans approved so that the layout was correct and mirrored how it was trading with the karaoke rooms and function rooms on the 15th of February. On the 16th and 23rd of February, I provided all the information Councillor Wade had requested, including landlord's approval, electrical certificates, fire risk assessments, PAT testing, insurance, EIC electrical certificates, and on the 27th of February we provided Councillor Wade with the final building control approval. On the 1st of March, councillors, you'll see an acoustic report was prepared by KP Acoustics, who attended on site and reported that they could not hear any music from the karaoke rooms in the flats on above Nevern Place. That was, I believe, flat number 1, councillors. Number 1, Nevern Place. On the 2nd of March and also the 8th of March, councillors, at our request, Philip Richardson from your public protection team visited and went into number 3 Nevern Place and number 1 Nevern Place. And again, they were not able to hear any music noise. Philip Richardson commented that they'd gone into flat 1 of 1 Nevern Place, which was actually the flat closest above the karaoke rooms, and there was no audible noise at 1 Nevern Place, and he says, I'm very confident that there wouldn't be in any of the other properties. We emailed a draft letter to councillors. I emailed it to the 3 local ward councillors that you have. I didn't receive any comment back on that letter. I did receive a call from Councillor, I think it's Andurian, forgive me if I mispronounced his name, and he did go to visit the restaurant because he hadn't been there. On the 10th of April, we sent out letters to local residents, which you've got in your pack, to the nearest living local residents, and I sent a copy of that and the paperwork to 23 residents' associations and 3 local ward councillors. In that letter, we advised of a further residents' meeting on the 25th of April, and on the 11th of April, we issued the application, and on the 15th of April, I sent copies of the application and the notice to the 23 residents' associations and 3 ward councillors. So we've had 3 meetings with local residents. There was a further one on the 25th of April. Pre-application advice. Advice was sought from Ian Davies, the police, who said that the police would object if we went for these hours for all week, but not Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We've sent draft emails to councillors for the letter to go to residents, circulated a letter to immediate residents as well, and then sent copies of application, dispersal policy, etc., to local residents' associations, councillors and residents. We've issued the application for karaoke and function rooms. Han has owned these premises, councillor, since 2017. You might remember them as Miss Q or Pink Nightclub, unfortunately, which had its licence revoked. Han re-obtained the licence again in 2018. The licence that they've got is not a restaurant licence. It doesn't have restaurant conditions attached to it. Karaoke, you might appreciate, is particularly popular with the Chinese community, and it's another thing that he'd like to do there. Obviously, it is to improve the trade from the restaurant. So we're proposing, well, there's 5 karaoke rooms. One accommodates 5, 3 accommodate 8, and 1 accommodates 12 people. And there's 3 function rooms for 5, 10 and 16 people. There's then an additional restaurant, which the public restaurant area has approximately a capacity of 100 seated covers. You must pre-book the function room or karaoke. You can't just walk in. They're all acoustically sealed, the karaoke rooms, councillor, so there's no noise breakout, and each one has its own waiter-waitress service. So you actually have a dedicated restaurant service from the bar and from the kitchen by way of a waiter-waitress service to function rooms or karaoke rooms. You've got a copy of the dispersal policy, and we've also said we'll do a home delivery policy, but councillors, we don't actually do any late night refreshment for home delivery after 11 o'clock, so you may feel that's not needed after speaking to your solicitor. We'd be happy to offer a condition, no late night refreshment for consumption off the premises after 2300. I'll discuss amendments to the conditions later, but we've said at the request of residents there is a condition it will not be a nightclub. The layout is such it couldn't be a nightclub. We've actually suggested, and this was part of the pre-application meeting, more restrictive conditions, councillors, if we trade for sale of alcohol after 11:30. So we've said that it'll be waiter-waitress service only to people seated with food, ancillary to a meal, and I know that I'll talk to your solicitor about those conditions later, but we've actually offered more restrictive conditions if you were minded to grant this application, and then we use the additional alcohol hours after 11:30. You must have pre-booked seats. We've got a dispersal policy, a home delivery policy, councillors. Dealing briefly with the reps, because I can see I'm running out of time. Some of the representations say that we're substantially changing the premises. Yes, we are. It's a restaurant. It's still half a restaurant. We've added 3 function rooms, which are food-led. You can only use if it's food. And then we've added 5 karaoke rooms. We didn't need planning permission for it. We got building control approval. We put more restrictive conditions, however, councillors, forward to you, that if we do sell after 11:30, then we've got to have waiter-waitress service, substantial food offered, people have got to be seated, and the alcohol's got to be ancillary to food, and I'm going to suggest the provision of karaoke. As a condition put forward, it's not a nightclub, and whilst it is a change, councillors, we've had 32 days of temporary event notices during the busiest period around Christmas, New Year and the Chinese New Year without any issues, complaints or concerns or objections raised by police or environmental health to any of those temporary event notices. It'll set a precedent. Well, it's each application's on its merits, you'll appreciate that. There'll be more antisocial behaviour. It's claimed in Nevern Place, Child's Place. I'm sure you've seen the list, councillors, attached. There are a total of 13 late night refreshment venues already open between midnight 30 and 2 o'clock, and even going with the big corporates up to 5 o'clock. So the police and environmental health have not objected on the basis of additional antisocial behaviour. We put forward a dispersal policy, and we've had 32 days of trading without issue. And the same goes for the PSPO. If there was an issue with the PSPO and the police had concerns about what we're doing, they would have objected, councillors. And the PSPO, of course, really directly relates here to the sale of alcohol. We don't do off-sales, councillors. No off-sales of alcohol, even though we could. And we won't be doing any late-night refreshment after 11 o'clock to take away. Drug usage is mentioned. No evidence of that. We're not a nightclub, councillors, and if there'd been any evidence of that, the police would have been round during our temporary event notices and shut us down. And it'll fall to the police, objectors say, to manage what will be a nightclub. There's a condition it will not be a nightclub. A condition wouldn't be put on a nightclub licence that all drinks are waiter-waitress service, or you've got to have food and you've got to be sat down in certain areas. You can't just turn this into a nightclub without a formal application. They say there's no dispersal policy. The objectors, there is. We provided karaoke without a licence. It's suggested. We did have a karaoke room in use for a private birthday party at midnight 05. Suggestions: we blocked a fire exit. We had to close one of the fire exits during the building works, but we still had 3 in use, councillors. The fire risk assessment that's been completed has been provided to Councillor Wade. And noise from karaoke rooms, I'd refer you, councillors, to the report from our officer and also the fact that your environmental health officer has visited on 2 occasions without objections. Taylor and Manchester City Council, I refer you to paragraph 77, councillors, that this isn't a review. Although we have
Time.
offered... Oof. Okay.
One sentence to wrap up, please.
Your policy, councillors, is 12 o'clock. There are sufficient grounds here with conditions offered that
Thank
we
you.
put forward and tens.
Now, questions from the committee. Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Chair. I have a couple of questions, just for clarity, really. First of all, how long have you been operating, can you hear me, the function rooms and the karaoke rooms up until this point?
So work started on them, I think, middle of last year, councillors, is that right? June? Yep. About June last year, work started. We've been providing entertainment under what you can do under the Live Music Act till 2300. And then we've been using the extra hours, which is what you'll be most interested in under the temporary event notices. We use them in November, December, January and February, councillors.
Thank you. And also, just going to the soundproofing, what precautions, I know you kind of touched on it, but can you get a bit more sort of detail with the soundproofing? Has it been done? What have you done to make it so?
I only had 10 minutes, councillor, so I had to rush through. So, yes, it's been fully sound encased. If you think about it, councillors, we've got a restaurant area outside ourselves, so we can't be having karaoke music coming out into the public restaurant area. We also have function rooms right next door to the karaoke rooms. They're entirely acoustically sealed, and Philip Richardson and his team, as I mentioned, have been twice to the residents, one who lives directly above the karaoke room and cannot hear the music outside. So they've been fully sealed. Is that correct?
Okay, I just got two short ones. Well, one might need a bit more detail, but what makes it not a nightclub, and can you make sure that you can clarify that just a bit more detail? And also staff training, will you be having any, for example, SIA badge holders or just your staff members?
So what makes it not, what is a nightclub, I guess, councillors, is the question. We've said it's not a nightclub, it won't be a nightclub. We were asked to include that as a condition. The conditions that we've offered up, and councillors, we've said waiter waitress service, if we're selling alcohol after 11:30. You've got to have a substantial meal. You've got to pre-book the rooms in advance. And I know that your solicitor suggested one of the conditions that people would have to be seated in certain areas, and we'd be happy about that other than the karaoke rooms. So you wouldn't have those sorts of conditions, councillors, on a nightclub. And the other thing that doesn't make it a nightclub is it's got lots of these little small rooms inside it. So you couldn't open it up into one big space without applying to yourselves to change the layout and make it into a large cavernous place, councillors. So there's a number of reasons why this could not simply be used as a nightclub moving forward.
The last one was your staff, yeah.
Completely forgot about that one, sorry. No, there is no proposal. We haven't used SIA door staff in the past. We haven't used them during the temporary event notices. The police have not asked us to have door staff during the temporary event notices, nor as part of this application. It very much appeals to the Chinese community who use the karaoke rooms. In particular, it is a Chinese restaurant at the end of the day with function rooms and karaoke rooms. And no, we're not proposing door staff, councillors. We are happy with the last admission time. There would be no booking taken after 11:30 at the very latest, councillor, so we wouldn't have anybody coming in late.
Councillor Noor.
I've got two questions, Chair. When it comes to dispersals, when people are leaving the restaurant, not the main road to Earls Court, the Nevin Place, how that is being taken care of?
We put a condition on the licence, and people do only and can only leave by Earls Court Road. The exits onto Nevin Place are fire exits. You can't leave that way, councillor.
Thank you. My other question is already mentioned, you had a meeting with the local resident. How will that continue in the near future and in the medium time?
It's safe to say, and I'm probably sure Councillor Wade might bring it up, Han initially held some meetings back in 2018 after the grant of the original licence, but as often happens, unfortunately, people don't turn up to the meetings after the licence is granted, so they weren't subsequently held. We've now held three actually, one in November, one in January, and then another one in April. And I will be making sure that every 6 months he's reminded to make sure he does it again. So there is an ongoing commitment, councillors, in the licence conditions that there must be a residents' meeting once every 6 months. Just as an aside, we've also said that if this licence is granted within the dispersal policy, that the contact mobile number for the duty manager and also Han's personal mobile number will be made available to residents who live on Nevin Place, Childs Walk and Spear Mews.
No further questions, Chair.
With regard to safety, how adequate is your staff training? Because it's very important that they have training just in case.
So by the conditions on the licence, councillors, we have to provide staff training. We've been using the karaoke rooms anyway under the temporary event notice and under you can do it under the Live Music Act to 11 o'clock without any issue or concern. If there is any issues that arise, the staff know to call the police in the immediate instance. If they can't resolve the conflict themselves, and they shouldn't get involved, of course, the staff are well aware of that. The manageress there has been there for many years and she holds a personal licence, as does Han, and there's always the manageress or Han on duty as a personal licence holder. We've had no issues on conflict management with the use of the karaoke rooms, and we don't expect to, councillors.
Thank you. And your premises supervisor, do they have a record? Are you keeping at the present time records and checks just of what's going on in the evening? Yes, an incident book.
Oh, sorry. We do have an incident book. We have to keep one. And that, again, is a condition of the premises licence, councillors.
Thank you. And there was I think an objector wrote in about padlocks on the doors.
So I was rushing to try and explain that, councillors, that during the building works, one of the fire exits had to be decommissioned because of the works that were going on. It was the fire exit to the rear of the premises, so that one was no longer used. It was the fire exit into Spear Mews. The fire exit sign, you couldn't see it, so people weren't getting confused that was a fire exit. There were still 2 fire exits out onto Nevin Place, and then also the main entrance, which is a fire exit as well, onto Earls Court Road, but that fire exit was not being used. Please bear in mind, councillor, that the capacity was a lot lower at the time because of the building works, and we could only use half of the restaurant area.
And will you be doing fire drills for the staff?
Oh, yes, sorry, councillors. Yes, they do fire alarm drills with the staff.
On what basis? How often?
Every month, councillors.
Thank you. Would you be willing to do it weekly? We can't condition, I'm just asking.
If you felt it appropriate, councillors, I think obviously we have a fire risk assessment which is prepared by a competent person. By law it has to be, and that's been provided to Councillor Wade, who asked for that, for this fire risk assessment. If we'll consult with, I'll assure you, if you're minded to grant it, we will consult with the fire competent person who prepared that and establish whether we should do it more than monthly, councillors.
I think that would be very helpful considering it's in the basement.
I will do.
Thank you. I'm done. Now, does our legal advisor have any questions?
Just 2, really. When you talked about the acoustic ceiling, is it just the karaoke rooms that are acoustically sealed, or is it the entire building?
It's just a karaoke. It's just the karaoke rooms. They have to be acoustically sealed round the actual edge of them, as well as the doors out of them, councillors. So when you push them, they like make that nice sound that when you push a door, and it's all got a nice seal round it. So it's the doors and the ceiling. I don't think the function rooms are acoustically sealed, are they? No, they're not, councillors.
Okay. And there's reference to the courtyard at the rear. And I think it's accessed via, obviously you can get through presumably from the fire exits and Spear Mews, there seems to be a kind of exit. Is that a communal courtyard where, I'm not clear who owns it and what it's, I think you put rubbish in there, or if you could just explain the courtyard to me, please.
We explained this at the residents' meeting, councillors. We don't use that area anymore because of complaints received in the past. It's our service yard, and it's also that of Jolly Bees, which is another restaurant there, councillors. But we don't use it to store any goods, and we don't put any rubbish out there, councillors. The only thing it can be used for is in the event of an emergency. Then you would use that fire exit, and then that would take you on to Spear Mews. But the very fact it's close to Spear Mews is why we don't use it, councillors.
I think that's it. So where do you store rubbish during the day then, if you're not storing it in the courtyard?
It's kept in the kitchen and then it's put out at night onto Earls Court Road, councillors.
And do you use the council's rubbish service, or do you use a private one?
We use the council's, which is why we couldn't assure you that it would be put out 30 minutes before any collection, because we don't know what time that might be.
That's it from me, thank you.
Now, any questions from the objectors? You have a question, Councillor Wade?
Yes, I have several.
Sorry?
I have several.
Okay.
Right. Han, how much experience have you had in operating a late-night entertainment venue?
Well, you know, he's only had experience since he's been operating these temporary event notices.
All right. How much training have you had around late-night entertainment venues? Because, in fact, there is a subtle change from running a restaurant to running a late-night entertainment venue.
We're running 5 karaoke rooms, which we've ran over a period of 3 months without issue. There is no specific training, unless you're going to correct me, for nightclub, which you might refer to it as. We don't intend to employ door staff, which I know was mentioned at residents' meetings. And the karaoke rooms themselves, they are staffed by an individual member of staff who's responsible for serving that room. And as I said, if there was any incident and it cannot be handled, and we haven't had anything at all of note, there's no police call-outs to anything that's happened, then the police would be called. To call it a late-night entertainment venue is unfair when we have 5 karaoke rooms that can accommodate 41 people. We then have function rooms and a restaurant that can accommodate 130 people.
I think that the committee also touched on this about the training and about how much staff training there is around how they manage actually karaoke rooms. Do they look in? Do they check? And also the dispersal, because I feel that your dispersal policy isn't appropriate.
In what way is it not appropriate?
We've had this discussion, and it'll come up later, but I think that at the moment you have staff that have been dealing with just a restaurant. If you've got the 3 function rooms, which will probably act virtually like a restaurant, but people respond differently in a karaoke room. You know, they drink, they're enclosed, they sing, they dance, they do. It's a different style of management of those rooms, and I just wonder how you're going to approach it and whether or not your staff have training and have capacity.
that they have the licensing training that's included within the conditions on the premises license. We do not feel it appropriate to provide additional training for the karaoke rooms. There are, as I said, 5 karaoke rooms, 5 people, 8 people, 8 people and 12 people. And yes, to answer your question, there is an individual member of staff who's responsible for that room, who checks in, who takes the food orders, because they must eat while they're in there. You can't just go in there without having food as well. And yes, they'll also take the drinks orders. We haven't been asked by the police to provide security, any security SIA. All of the temporary event notice, councillors, they were all held prior to us issuing the application. So if the police had had any suggestion that there'd been disorder or problems, they would have asked for Security Industry Authority. I think that's what Councillor Wade is suggesting, that we need somebody with that sort of appropriate training for 5 karaoke rooms.
All right, there are 2 points following from that. Each room has a designated amount of people that can go into that room, okay? But we've been in those rooms, and you could actually have 1/3 more people in those rooms quite comfortably. So this touches on to how somebody manages those rooms. If it says 6, but you can fit 12, who is actually controlling precisely how many people are going into those rooms?
You must pre-book, and you'll be told how many people you can bring, and it's 5, 8, 8 and 12. They're the maximum numbers, and those people will be shown into the room by the members of management, which is either Han, or I think you've met her, the manager of the restaurant as well. Either one of them is always working.
I think our concern is that Han is an absolutely delightful man. He smiles a lot. He has failed conspicuously to be able to manage, and so it's important that we do interrogate how those rooms are going to be used. And in addition, in the last meeting we had, when asked about where Han had actually checked his karaoke, he said under the commercial premises, not the residential. That's what he said in the last residents' meeting, when he was specifically asked which rooms have you used during your 10s, and they were the ones that were under Jollibee and not under the body of, because the building goes from Earls Court Road through to 5 Nevin Place.
Can I just, well, first of all, Councillor Wade hasn't actually made a representation, but it sounds like she's making a representation verbally to you. Councillor Wade is not an interested party. Yet she seems to be asking questions and now making a case, but didn't make any representation.
You're not a registered party, but obviously you can speak on behalf of one of the existing registered parties, as long as you only amplify their evidence, as long as you don't introduce new evidence. So
I think she's introducing new evidence now by way of questions, if you don't mind.
I would disagree. I would say that it's covered in quite a lot of the residents' meetings that were held, and also the letters that were sent in.
But who are you speaking on behalf of, Councillor Wade?
Councillor Tim Verboden, who was also at one of the residents' meetings you held.
Sorry, can you just clarify what new evidence she's introducing? Sorry, I just lost track. Sorry.
She's introducing evidence from those residents' meetings, councillors, which Councillor Wade was there at, but it's not mentioned in any of the other representations.
If it's not mentioned in the representations, then it can't be taken into account during the hearing.
But to answer the question, I will answer the question about noise readings above in Jollibee. That's correct, I was at that meeting, which is why we asked Philip Richardson, and he went out on 2 occasions. I think at the second occasion, actually, he went out at the request of Councillor Wade on the 8th of March. He'd also been out on the 2nd of March. He went to 2 different flats. He went to the flat that actually is closest above the karaoke rooms and could hear nothing, councillors.
Thank you. What level of supervision is going to take place in your karaoke rooms and function rooms? I think the function rooms you said were sit-down meals, but what level of supervision is going to take place in the karaoke rooms?
As I've said, each karaoke room will be serviced. You won't come from the karaoke room to the bar. You can't do that. There is a member of staff who is designated to look after each of the 5 karaoke rooms. That's not 5 different members of staff, I have to say. It'll depend upon how many are booked and how many are in each one as to how many we would need. You wouldn't need one member of staff to look after 5 people in a karaoke room. That wouldn't be great commercial sense, but there is a member of staff responsible for each of the karaoke rooms. Again, I don't see this issue as being raised in any of the representations.
It's noted.
Going back to the testing of the karaoke rooms, that when Mr. Richardson came, what time of day did he come? Was it during the times that you might be using it, say, after 11 o'clock at night?
I don't know what time he came on the first occasion. I think he came at about 9:15 on the first occasion. I don't know what time he came on the second one. But the music was being played in the karaoke rooms, and in his professional opinion, it could not be heard at all. He could not hear it. He actually said he stood outside the door, councillors, of the karaoke room inside the restaurant. When the door was shut, he could carry on a normal conversation with Han without hearing the music.
Thank you. When you mentioned that you weren't going to apply for a licence for the ground floor, because that's primarily the entrance, can you tell me how many tables, service tables that you have on the ground floor? Because as far as I can see, your primary business areas in the basement with the kind of, you've had bubble tea, you've had a number of different enterprises on the ground floor, but it hasn't really ever served as part of the restaurant, to my mind. Perhaps you'd like to clarify.
Again, I don't see this as being any part of any representation, but I've already confirmed to you, councillors, that we were drawing that area from the application, so it will not be part of the licence on the ground floor.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Smith.
Now for the objector's case.
I think there's only more questions from the objectors.
Do the objectors have any more questions, or would you like to make your submission now?
Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, the residents have a question, which is that we think with all these late night licenses that have been granted recently, that the committees have favoured the commercial venues for their licenses rather than the needs for the expectations of the residents for quality of life, meaning that the late night...
Sorry,
Yeah.
first of all, you're supposed to be asking a question of the applicant. That's what we're...
Sorry. Right. Yes, I'd like to clarify, please. When you had the temporary event notices over the winter months, were all 5 karaoke rooms working? Because I'd understood that perhaps a couple of them weren't in operation, so the evidence that you present isn't completely clear of easy exiting.
That's a good question. I don't know whether... Do you need to switch your microphone off? Can you hear me while I'm... Yeah. So it's a good question. During the Chinese New Year and Christmas periods, at times all 5 were in use, councillors. Normally it would be 3 or 4 that were in use. We wouldn't necessarily have all of them booked. And moving forward, it would be nice if you were minded to allow us to use them, that we'd have all of them booked, councillors. But we may well not, particularly Thursdays, although Thursdays is the new Friday, that you may not have them all booked. But yes, over Christmas and New Year, and particularly the Chinese New Year as well, all of them were in use.
And now we can have the objector's case. Who will be starting? Ms. Seaborn?
Yes, if you like. Thank you. I represent the Earls Court Village Residents Association, and I've attended 2 residents' meetings with Kung Fu on 8th of January, where it seemed that Councillor Wade had initiated it because we'd had no notice of it before, and the second on the 25th of April, which we did have notice for. So after talking, we went downstairs to see the karaoke rooms. I did find the layout very confusing, and I would think it might be very confusing if there were a lot of patrons there. And if I might say, I thought it might be rather difficult to find the toilets and then get back to the correct rooms. And would there be enough toilets to service the men before exiting at 2 a.m. One thing that I've found out about is that there was no mention that there was going to be SIA, Security Industry Authority registered door supervisors would be employed. For example, after 10:30 hours until an hour, half an hour after 2 a.m. at the dispersal, who would professionally ensure that patrons would exit quietly and quickly and find their taxis and stop people from standing around in groups. And when it comes down to the residents in Earls Court Village, there are 3 entrances from Earls Court Road into the conservation area of Earls Court Village. There's Redfield Lane, Kenway Road and Hogarth Place. There are 2 more entrances into Child Street and Child's Place. They're cul-de-sacs and they're directly opposite the Kung Fu in Earls Court Road. Our residents are already plagued by the noise from boisterous people at night into the small hours. To have a possible up to 100 more people exiting venues would definitely be detrimental to the residents' expectations for their quiet quality of life. A Child's Place would be worst hit as it's opposite the Kung Fu. Residents have told me that at weekends at the moment there are a few noisy people talking, throwing cans and driving off in cars until 1 a.m. There is already a 24-hour gambling casino next to Child's Place and Earls Court Road. In the entrance to Redfield Lane, a resident tells me that they are constantly woken by noisy people and boy racers over the cobblestones until 2 a.m. In Hogarth Passage, I'm told that they are bothered by noisy and singing people until the small hours, and on the 2 corners of Kenway and Walgrave Road, I am told of noisy people until 2 a.m. All our roads are narrow, so noise easily echoes upwards. The houses are simple and not designed to cope with noisy streets. And people pass my house, which is the other end of Redfield Lane, going to Cromwell Road, also waking us up sometimes. And we request that Bucket's more common sense is employed when making the decisions for these licences. And when I received an acknowledgement from licensing for my submission for this application, it said that the decisions would be decided on legalities and common sense. It seems to us residents that there are few legalities in evidence and practice that protect the expectations of the residents for their qualities of life. The commercial premises are given licenses to have longer and longer hours of operation, which only give the other commercial venues more encouragement to apply for the same. The venues that are allowed very late licences at the moment by your committee attract some dubious types of customer who cause most of the antisocial behaviour going, and it's of all types of antisocial behaviour. We think that the considerations of the quality of life for people living in the village is totally important than just 2 hours extra for selling drinks and food in Earls Court Road. We already know that there are no police in the road late at night. It strikes us that granting the amount of late night, early morning closing licences is making the situation worse. Would you have your children and grandchildren live here next to all these late night closing venues? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fawcett?
Thank you very much. I'm representing the residents from Spear Mews, and I have been a resident there for more than 10 years. And I must say that, firstly, I think it's extremely positive, Mr. Han, that you have a thriving business, and I hope it can continue to be very successful within the current licensing hours. The issue is all about the quality and safety of the Earls Court area for residents, where many families and many older people are living. When I first moved into Spear Mews over 10 years ago, we were woken up every single night between 3 and 4 a.m. when people were coming out of places like my place on Trebovia Road or Miss Q, and it was a very difficult place to stay. Over the years, Earls Court has been transformed, I would say, to a much more civilized place to live. But the recent changes in licensing, which are allowing far more late night activities, means that it's really moving in the wrong direction. If I talk about the experience I've had and others have had in the Mews, we've woken up to our bins being stuffed with rubbish overnight. My colleague here mentioned the need for toilets. All our plants have been used for urinals, and it's a really very unpleasant environment in addition to the noise. When you live in cobbled streets, when people are coming out late at night and everything is echoing, it's a very difficult place to live. Now, karaoke. I have spent many evenings myself enjoying karaoke, and I understand entirely what Mr. Han is trying to do with Kung Fu. I would suggest the issue is not karaoke, but it's the late hours. Karaoke late in the evening, which is after dinner, after people have been to the bar, is much more rowdy and much more noisy. And that is the concern. And the fact that Mr. Han is not preparing for extra training for his staff gives an impression that he's not taking these issues seriously enough. 30 excited people leaving the premises at the same time is a lot. The fact that Mr. Han's mobile number will be given to us only fills us with grave concern. He should not be running an operation that ever requires us to use it. So the key issue is dispersal for those in Spear Mews and how those people are going to be managed. There is a note in here that when people want to leave and smoke, they will be directed away from Spear Mews. So thank you very much for that. But when they leave the premises after an excited evening, probably with quite a lot of alcohol, how can we be assured that the noise levels will be kept low for those across the road and those on the same side? That's the concern we have. Now, people leaving at 2 a.m. in the morning, they've had a great time, they don't go immediately. We've had examples of people staying around the area for many hours after they leave the premises. So I think the question, councillors, is what do we want Earl's Court to be like in future? Is this an area for the residents, the young people, the older people? Or is this an area where we just leave to commercial establishments and it's not a place to live? That's the critical thing. Thank you.
Ms. Sabine, will you be speaking?
Sorry, Councillor, could I just confirm where I can't find the representation? I probably just missed it. Might not be a name on it. Could you just confirm which page it is?
My understanding is when I spoke to licensing yesterday, you were originally the anonymous representation in the pack.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, my main concern is that basically I'm really worried about the dispersal policy because I live in flat 12 Warner Place. My mom lives with me. She's quite unwell. And the issue what I have is that sometimes when I was younger, I used to go to clubs and karaoke as well. I used to, have a couple of drinks and everything. And from my experience, I don't think that people, they will leave the area. In the past, I have seen a lot of people like, you leave a venue, they are very happy. It doesn't mean that they're really drunk or anything, but they're really loud. There is a lot of taxis picking up them. And also in the area, I agree with, Kung Fu, there is no evidence of drug use at the restaurant. But in the area, especially in my building, there is people selling drugs. So I'm really worried that, maybe it's going to attract a lot of people that they try to speak to the, clients that they're going to leave Kung Fu quite late to try to sell drugs. Because I guess that, sometimes people that they go to a karaoke is quite late. They are people young, they are vulnerable. They don't really understand the problems that, that drug using. And that's one of the main concerns. Also about smoking, because sometimes there is people, smoking quite late outside my flat and they make a lot of noise and everything. And also I'm really concerned about, people leaving the, Kung Fu quite late because there is a lot of places right now that in Earl's Court that you can buy, food quite late. And then basically I'm really worried that people, they're really hungry, they buy something and there is not a lot of places where you can put your rubbish. So it's going to be like really dirty. So that's my main concerns.
Thank you very much.
Have all the objectors who are registered to speak spoken now?
She's not listed. Councillor Wade, did you want to add a few words on behalf of Tim?
Can I just remind, obviously you can only amplify Councillor Verboven's evidence, you can't add new evidence.
Thank you for letting me speak today. I'm speaking as actually the chair of Nevern Square Conservation Area, RA. The points that I would like to...
Sorry, did they put a representation in, Councillor Wade?
The councillors put in a representation, I believe.
No, the councillor did, but I don't think the Conservation Society
Well,
did.
the meetings that you had, Mr. Smith, were the Nevern Square Conservation Area.
So you can only speak on behalf of who's put in a registered objection. So Councillor Verboven is a registered party. You're able to, if he's given you authority, you're able to speak on his behalf.
Yeah.
But you can't speak on behalf of anything
right.
that's not registered,
Right.
and you can't introduce new evidence.
I'm speaking on behalf of Councillor Verboden, and Councillor Verboden has actually seen the text that I'm going to read out and has made amendments.
He's given you authority to speak on his behalf, has he?
Yes, do you want to call him? Thank you, Mr. Smith. The points that I would like to bring to the committee's attention are the location, the history and context of the venue as a late-night entertainment licence, and specific to this application, structure, fire escaped routes, noise nuisance, community engagement, maintenance, and management, specifically about the management and the dispersal policy. The building runs from Earls Court Road to 5 Niven Place at basement level. There are 31 residential units above the restaurant, with residential properties over retail units on Earls Court Road and single-family homes in Charles Place and Charles Street. 188 to 182 Earls Court Road has in its time been the Duke of Richmond, and then the building was divided. At present, the address is shared with Jollibee, with Kung Fu having a short section on the ground floor for their entrance, with the majority of their operational working area in the basement. In the 90s, there were a series of disastrous businesses, It's a Scream, Miss Q, Ping, and others. The license was finally called in after a series of violent crimes, including guns, knives, and the persistent problem of exiting clients congregating in local residential streets, and significantly crowding into Earls Court Road despite oncoming traffic. The crowd disposal policy included a security guard patrolling the area, Niven Place, Trempleton Place, and Spear Mews. There was significant disruption to residents in Charles Place with cab pickups. Charles Place is a narrow cul-de-sac, and so vehicles will have to go down to the end of the street to turn round. We do not want to return to this type of chaos that a late-night venue creates. Since its closure as a late-night venue, residents in Niven Place, Charles Place, Spear Mews, and Earls Court Road have had peaceful and uneventful nights. One of the significant issues is when Rolf Harris converted the basement into a late-night club, he removed all the party walls between 180 Earls Court Road and 5 Niven Place. Mr. Mahaffey required that there was a sound-safe ceiling installed. When Han took over the business, the entire internal fabric was removed.
Sorry, councillors, this is going over,
I'm putting it, sorry.
way and over above what is in Councillor Verboven's. There's no mention of safety, structure, anything work to the building. I provided all of this to Linda, Councillor Wade, even though it's not part of licensing.
Mr. Smith,
he doesn't mention any of that in his representation, Councillor.
That's a fair comment.
Mr. Smith, I didn't interrupt your presentation, and I'm sure you'll be able to ask me questions later.
Trying to keep where we are legal, that's all, Councillor Wade. You can expand.
I said it was about the context, because it's important about how the sound-safe ceiling was removed during the internal works, and therefore, and you've said that the sound-safe ceiling in the area that covers the...
I'm sorry, Councillor Wade. Our legal officer is going to speak now because you're way out of line at this. You completely have gone 35 years ago. It had nothing to do with Tim. Tim wasn't even a councillor then or lived here or anything. We have to be relevant. So I'm going to ask our legal officer to comment on this, if you can continue on that route.
I think what we need to focus on is the application at hand. While some background context is helpful, obviously you need to be mindful of the fact that you are speaking on behalf of Councillor Verboven, and Mr. Smith is correct. You need to confine your representation to what he has put in his representation. Whilst you can amplify, I think it would be useful to the councillors to hear what your concerns are, mainly in relation to this application. The here and now is really the focus, but obviously...
All right, the reason for identifying the issue of the sound-safe ceiling is the fact that when the building was reconfigured, that the sound-safe ceiling isn't the same standard as the one that Mr. Mahaffey did, which touches on some of the concerns we had when we went round the venue about the construction of the karaoke booths.
Can I
because
just interrupt? I think we need to just be mindful of the fact that we haven't had a representation from the Fire Authority, from planning, or from building regulations. So I think it would be helpful for your case to focus on what issues you are on. Especially, I'm interested to know if there are any issues during the 10s or anything like that. I think that will be more helpful, to be honest.
Yes, but when we asked Han at a residents' meeting, and Tim Verboden was there, and we said, where have you done your tents? And he said he'd done it under the commercial premises and not under the area that might most affect. So there's the issue I have with the karaoke rooms is a couple of them have voids in the shells. The business does share a courtyard with access Spear Mews, which you covered, but apparently you're not going to use. We have a problem. We have a problem basically because the method of the business is that they tend to do things and ask for permission later. And this is whether it was the extraction, whether it's the installation of karaoke rooms, changing the nature of the business from a restaurant. That is important, whether it's the way you manage your extraction, because if you're going to be operating later, your extraction is not fit for purpose. So I was going to ask whether, as a condition, if the committee were minded to grant, there should be a terminal hour that the plant is used, and that we require for the date for the business to implement their approved planning application to install the high-level extraction and remove the present plant from the wall. You say, on your plans circulated, Spear Mews was on the fire exit route. So we have one exit onto the nail bar, which is routinely blocked by rough sleepers, crack users and furniture. The second exit is at the rear of the premises behind the men's lavatories and is not prominent. The third exit, I understood from the plan submitted, was through Spear Mews, and I presume that is no longer the case. Each exit should be checked, cleared and cleaned every day at the end of service at night.
Councillors, there's nothing about this in Councillor Boven's representation.
Sorry, I was just telling the chair that
I have to interject, councillors. I have meetings with councillors.
We are only going to take into account anything that you say that is linked to Councillor Verboven's statement, because obviously we're stepping outside. We need to be very careful that you're not introducing new evidence. Otherwise, if the councillors are swayed, then it's a ground for an appeal. So you mean to be very mindful.
No, I'm being very careful, and Councillor Verboden...
I think the point we're going to make is that we are only going to focus on what's amplified and what's not extra stuff. I think just because obviously you're concerned that extra stuff's being said, but the committee are aware of this.
I haven't got a chance to respond.
But it's appropriate for us to ask for conditions that actually that each exit is checked, cleared and cleaned every day and at the end of service because of the
We'll save that for the condition session, okay? Right, fine. So I'm giving you half a minute to wrap this up because you've gone completely off-piste.
I would beg to differ insofar as I think that this business, I don't feel the management is appropriate to have a late night venue. And I think it's caused a lot of resident concern, whether it's how consultation doesn't happen or it is intermittent or somebody gets handed letters. Han was unaware of the fact that he was supposed to have complied with the conditions of his original license, was unaware that he had to inform people. I mean, he's a nice guy. Everybody likes him, but he's confrontational averse. So you've got...
Okay, thank you. Time.
Well, we're still concerned about how they're going to... There's no dispersal policy.
There is, and actually, We have discussed it, and we have it in the paper. So thank you very much, and your time is up. Any questions now from the committee? Councillor Burns?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I have just one for now, possibly two, but there are not many complaints being made, or I don't seem to have any. I've got, in the last, talking since sort of last summer, there was one on the 17th of the 8th, which was to do with noise and sort of working overtime. Where are the rest of the complaints? There was another one on the 24th of the 4th, but that was just complaining that the fact that there are karaoke rooms and function rooms, there was no actual noise complaint. So where are all the actual real complaints? Because really that's what we need to see. If there's so many issues, such as noise and late night, we need to be able to see it, and I can't see it. Can you help with that? Yes.
To Seaborn.
As a local resident and knowing our residents, there are people late at night are in their beds, and the smart ones have their bedrooms away from the road. They're also extremely busy, professional people, elderly and children, and if they hear noises, they have to turn over and go to sleep because they've got to work the next day. They cannot wake up and get on the telephone at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 1 o'clock in the morning and be forever phoning the police. I've had that trouble in my house, and life becomes exhausting to continuously get on the phone to complain, and then you can't get hold of the police, and it's all very tiring and a waste of our lives because we can't have our own lives. We have to be paying attention to other people all the time.
Yeah, you realize, of course, that you can log it online the next day. It doesn't have to be in the middle of the night that you're phoning the police. You can go to the council's website and do that.
Thank you. I'll tell them that.
Yes, that makes it much more efficient, and you have it in writing.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Noor?
It's a bit confusing. I think the issue we're raising is the licensing should not be extended beyond the current hours. So I think the residents are comfortable with the operations at the moment from this establishment. The concern is there are other establishments that are already running later, which are causing considerable problems. Our assumption is, from all the things we've seen about the fact it is karaoke, people will be drinking a lot, they will be very excited when they come out, there will be a lot of taxis, that we will exacerbate a problem that exists from other establishments
Thank you very
in the
much.
area.
But that we can only deal with specifics, and you're raising fears along.
But there can't be complaints for something that hasn't yet happened.
Right, exactly, but we can only judge based on that, or else they will appeal. Yeah, and they had lots of 10s. I think you mentioned, was it 32 or?
13.
There were 32 days, councillors, and those temporary event notices covered the hours that we are now applying for. And I know I'll get the chance to ask a question, but Councillor Burns, you've already asked the question, haven't you, about what complaints happened during those 10s?
Right, thank you. Councillor Noor.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, you said the quality of resident is very important. It is important for us, the resident to have rest in their homes, especially late hours. At the same time, we all know Earls Court is quite a very busy place. and there's a lot of other outlets open, either similar or what they're suggesting. Do you have any suggestions for the business in terms of the extension?
Sorry, we're going to use that during, it's a very good question, and I agree with you. I think we'd like you to actively participate when we discuss conditions, because that would be really productive. So we're going to wait till we have the conditions session in a few minutes. Thank you.
Hello, I would like to ask, can I ask a question?
Sorry, you can't.
I'm a resident.
Are you a registered speaker?
Registered?
So,
Well,
are you one of the 25 people?
I applied to turn up here.
Yes, but you need to be a registered speaker.
Ah.
Are you one of the 25 people registered on the list?
You could just get...
Or I'll get someone else to ask the question for you.
Name is on the list.
Your name is on the list?
Right, yes.
Fine, if you're on the list, that's fine.
Okay.
Can I take your name, please?
My name is Robert.
Lindsay, I'm really sorry. On our list, he's not on there. It may be an issue with.
I wrote.
Right, you're not on
I
the
wrote-
list, but ask someone else to ask the question.
I
That'll get
wrote to
round
the
it.
licensing board. I sent an email saying I was turning up today.
What is your name, your full name? Because you're not on the list. Ask the officers
I'm
to
not on
check,
the list.
please.
What a sham.
Yes, Robert asked.
I-
Turn your thing.
Should I turn this? Yeah. I would like to know.
No, you have to ask.
Oh.
If it helps, councillors, let him ask the question direct to us. It's a bit daft asking somebody else to ask the question. I'll assume that is it Karen Falls that's been asked the question? Just
I would just like to know some details in regards to dispersal of how you're managing the crowds when the venue of Mr. Hahn closes at night. Because previously there were a lot of issues where everybody spilled out into the street all at once and they lingered forever in the side streets, sitting down outside my porch, effing and blinding, shouting, arguing, sometimes fighting. And so I would very much like to know the details how Mr. Hahn would deal with crowd dispersal. Because if everybody was to get into the street all at one time, all together, we would have a bit of a problem. So,
It's also when they smoke.
shall I answer the question?
yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm not
Yeah.
sure if anybody's read any of the papers that we actually sent over to you, councillors.
Yes, they did send in the dispersal policy.
There's a over two-page dispersal policy. Nobody actually seems to have read it or appreciate it's there. We specifically address, quite rightly because you've asked the question, the karaoke rooms, because there's 41 people in there, and those are the rooms, yes, that people will have been singing. And we specifically address what we're going to do. And I did mention this at the residents' meetings. We'll stagger councillors the time that those rooms close. We would anticipate of those 41, possibly a half will catch taxis because the tubes do stop round about midnight 30. There's night buses. And you'll see in the dispersal policy councils that we did this during the temporary event notices, the members of staff who are on will actually go out to the cabs with the people who've been using the karaoke rooms, and that was done during the temporary events. But all of this stuff is in the dispersal policy. The one thing we didn't put in there, and that was asked for at the residents' meeting, I acknowledge we haven't done that, and that is the provision of an SIA security officer to walk around the area. We're very much different than the nightclub and late bar operators. If there was a B@1 there and other nightclub operators, late bars, that's not us. We're talking about 41 people maximum, councillors from the karaoke rooms. But that's to answer your question. There is a dispersal policy, it's in there.
right.
Okay.
Any questions from our legal officer?
No questions from me, thank you.
Any questions from the applicant?
I do have a couple, if you don't mind. Are you aware, I think it was, is it Miss Seabom? Is that right? Is that how I pronounce your name? The residents' meeting that we held in January that I was at with you, that was initiated by ourselves. I did do it through Councillor Wade, but I initiated that. We'd held one in December November. It wasn't very well attended. We didn't do that one very well, but we initiated the one in January. I was going to say, are you aware there's a dispersal policy? Nobody seems to be aware, but there is one. I was going to ask Karen Fawcett, you mentioned that you're representing the residents of Spear Mews. That's not in your representation, you represent them. But certainly when I had that residents meeting in January, there was a gentleman there, and I can't remember his name, he was lovely, and he was more than happy with what we were suggesting. So are you representing all of the residents on Spear Mews?
We have a chat group, and I told them I was coming, and we have talked about it. I think John Walker was at the meeting earlier. He's travelling at the moment, and he requested me to come.
I don't think he put a representation in there, did he?
I don't know, actually.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then I think the final question, it's just a quick one, and this is to Councillor Wade, and it's actually in our application, which I sent to you, Councillor Wade, to read, is that in terms of the extraction you mentioned, we've assured the committee by way of a condition that the extraction is actually switched off at midnight, which is the current hours that we can use it until. So that's just to point out. Are you aware of that, Councillor Wade?
Moment, we're trying to find your dispersal policy.
Well, I sent it to you by emails.
We're looking in the pack and we can't find the dispersal policy.
It was submitted as additional evidence separate to that main pack, so it would have gone to everybody who registered to speak and gave representations via email.
Right.
If anybody has a digital device, I'm happy to forward it on to you now, or alternatively, give me 5 minutes, I can print off a couple of copies if you think that would be useful.
Yes, please.
Councillor Wade, I did send it to you on the 21st of March. And I sent it to...
I think we're going... Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I would like to call a 5-minute break. Please, I'd like this sorted. Can you please give them the dispersal policy? They can review it. Thank you.
All right, but I would like to say to the committee that, yes, I did see it, and I did have a conversation with Jonathan Smith, saying that I didn't think it was adequate because it didn't include the patrol round. And he said they were going to hold people...
Have you seen it or you haven't seen it?
I saw the original, I haven't seen the final, so I don't know whether there are any amendments.
Should we give them 5 minutes to read it?
It's not changed, councillors, if that's...
Sorry?
It's not changed, councillors.
Okay,
But
we're going to take 5 minutes now to get sorted. You get sorted. Thank you. Okay. Are you ready? Our officer just confirmed that this document was sent out on the 30th of May. Just so everybody knows that. Are we ready to start the discussion of conditions?
Has he finished with his questions?
Oh, have you finished your questions? Yes?
Sorry, Councillor, just bear with me. You've taken me. Yes, I had. It was just about the 12 o'clock switch off of the extraction. Yes, I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is very important because Mrs. Seabohm and Ms. Fawcett and Ms. Sabin, you really have a chance to give your input here because it's very important to us that our residents are happy. So let's begin the conditions, and please pay attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this document was circulated by governance yesterday. Has everybody received a copy of the draft conditions, which comprise the conditions suggested by the applicant and as amended with tweaks by me? Has everybody seen that? You've all got copies, right? So this is just for discussion only. It's only if the committee are minded to grant, so it's just part of the discussion process. So I'm going to run through the conditions, and if anybody's got anything to say, if you put your hand up. So you've made it clear that the ground floor is not going to be included now as part of the application. Presumably you still want the plan to be replaced because it's got the different colour areas in it.
We would need to replace the plan if you were minded to grant it with the coloured areas. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, so I'm going to start from the beginning. So conditions 14 and 21, which the applicant is seeking to amend and which have been already run past environmental health and agreed, and I've just added in some little bit of extra wording. Can I ask the applicant if they are happy with number 14 as tweaked by me?
The trouble is, because it's a council collection, your wording, whilst it might be good, had we got a private collection, we would know what time they were coming. I can't agree your extra wording there, I'm afraid. The actual words that you've got two there, they were both put forward by Philip Richardson as appropriate. Sorry about that, but it is a council bin collection, so we would inadvertently breach that.
Thank you. Any comments on that?
Number 21, no refuse collections outside the hours of 9 to 18. So how are they going to do it?
Sorry, we were on number 14 first of all,
Oh,
so I presume you
14.
haven't got any comments on 14. So if you move to 21, the proposed amendment...
That daytime?
Yes, daytime till midnight.
That the rubbish should only be deposited outside the premises in Earlscourt Road for collection during the hours of daytime. That will be rather difficult on the pavement, won't it?
Well, I think it's preventing it from being put elsewhere. Was there issues with rubbish being put elsewhere before?
With the residents meeting, we actually, number 21 is stricter than it currently is, because we could actually put the rubbish out on Spear Mews or Nevern Place. What we've actually said by both of those conditions is it only goes on to Earlscourt Road, only between 0800 and midnight. So it's stricter than what we've currently got, actually, and Philip was happy, Philip Richardson.
What time is the normal collection out of interest?
It varies, councillors, with the bin collections from the council. It can be early, it could be 10:30, up to 10:30 sometimes, so it does vary, councillors.
Did you have a point to make about 14? No? Okay. Moving on to 21, the applicant is seeking to change the condition to say no rubbish, including bottles or cans, shall be deposited in or collected from Spear Mews or Nevern Place. So that supplements 14. Are you happy with that?
Thank you. That's excellent.
Yes.
You okay with that?
Right, now moving on to the conditions proposed by the applicant. Number 1, which they've offered, I haven't changed. The premises will not operate as a nightclub, discotheque or similar venue. Are you happy with that condition?
I have a question to that in regards to...
Can I just interrupt? Are you happy for this chap to ask questions? Or
I live above Mr. Hunt's
You're
premises.
not a registered objector, so technically speaking, you do need to go through one of the registered speakers, unless the applicant's happy.
I'm happy for him to ask a question. It's a bit of a nonsense otherwise, councillors.
Okay, we'll do that going forward. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Although it says here that it will not operate as a nightclub and discotheque, which is fine, and we are all happy about that, if Mr. Hahn was to, one day, I was told, was to leave and to greener pastures somewhere else, then the next person that will take over this place would have a late night license, I was told, because it will stick with the premises. So that is also a bit of a concern.
I think at present, as Mr. Smith has advised, the existing licence isn't restricted to restaurant-type conditions, which are normally substantial food, waiter-waitress service, seated at tables. They haven't got that on the licence at the moment, so really and truly, they could be a proper nightclub if they wanted to be under the terms of the existing licence, although they'd have to make some changes to the plans. So you need to bear that in mind. We can't, this is a variation application, we can't take away what they've already got. We can only focus on what is the here and now. So you need to be mindful of that. So they're obviously alive to the fact that you're concerned that it could be turned into a disco or nightclub. So they've offered this condition, which will make it more difficult for them to do so. So
not for Mr. Hahn. I'm aware of that. He has no plans in regards to that. But for the next person,
but all licences are in perpetuity. There's no such thing as personal licences.
So the late night opening hours will stick with these premises even after Mr. Hahn has gone. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's a bit of a concern. All right. Thank you.
Can I ask the clarification? So this means in the licence going forward, it will have the sentence, it will not operate as a nightclub, discotheque or similar venue.
And I've also put in, I don't know what the applicant's thoughts are, I've also put in condition, what did I say? 10, the licensable activities will be ancillary to the main function as a restaurant, which kind of further tightens it, but I don't know what, we'll come to that in a minute. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
I do have a question. I understand that basically some people that want to drink alcohol, they will need to order some food, yeah? But in the past, myself and my friends, we used to go to places where they have the similar policies. We were only allowed 2 other bottles of, wine if we used to order food. We used to order the food, but we didn't eat it. We were allowed to drink and drink. So my question to Mr. Hahn is like, how are you going to make sure that the people that they ordered the food and the alcohol, they eat the food and they don't leave it there? Because in the past, myself and my friends, we used to do that all the time.
Sorry, can you slow down a bit and not speak too close into it, because it's kind of echoing. Can you just shorten the question so we can understand what you're actually asking?
My question is, how is Mr. Hahn going to make sure that the people that they order alcohol, they're going to eat the food that they order as well? Because from my experience, I have done it myself. I used to go to venues, order food and not eat it, just to be able to, drink the alcohol.
Sorry, do you want to just comment on the existing licence, what they can do under the existing licence and what's proposed? That might clarify.
Yes, so answer just one of your earlier questions. Yes, Karen, can I call you Karen, do you mind? The fact that it cannot be a nightclub, discotheque or similar venue, that will apply whether Han's operating or anybody else in the future, so you have that peace of mind. In terms of the licence at the moment, we do actually have an open bar licence. Han could be operating a pub down there if he wanted to, but he doesn't. To answer your question about can we make people eat, that's a difficult one. You can never make people eat, but when you book, the time you book the karaoke rooms, you book it for the night, and you, as part of that, you must order food. It's a requirement. It's part of the condition we've put forward. We can't forcibly make somebody eat. Somebody may not feel very well, but they must order food. And at the end of the day, it's got a huge kitchen, and it is a restaurant at the end of the day. It's a 130-cover restaurant. So we can't make people eat, is what I'm saying to you. But you must, because we've offered a condition, actually take substantial refreshment if you're using the karaoke rooms.
Yeah, you have answered my question. Thank you.
I'd like to add something, that under licensing law, if people are getting too drunk, the premises is not allowed to serve them. Can you confirm that?
That's correct by law, and the staff are trained in that as well, councillors, by the two personal licence holders.
Just clarification. Thank you for the additional information that Mr. Han could already be operating a pub. Does this imply that Mr. Han could turn this premise into a pub operating until 2 a.m. under his request?
No, we could only turn it to the hours that it's currently got, which is 11:30, closing at 12.
But it could be a vertical drinking venue if...
Yeah. If this application was granted, we couldn't turn it into a pub because, well, we could, but we'd have all sorts of strange conditions, that it'd be waiter, waitress only, that you've got to have a substantial meal if you order alcohol, that you've got to pre-book the rooms, and you've got meeting rooms, function rooms and karaoke rooms as well. So the fact you've got all of these things is going to make it very difficult for anybody to operate a bar in there. It will be a very strange bar.
I'm just wondering, in your very helpful point 1, whether something to that effect could be added to the list. Operate as a pub, nightclub, discotheque, or
sorry, number 1
venue.
says will not operate as a nightclub, discotheque or similar venue, so that restricts it as it is. And also, I think you mentioned earlier on, because the current configuration, which is on the existing premises plan, they probably need to put in a further application to reconfigure if they wanted like a large space rather than lots of different cubicles and rooms. That will be another safeguard. And also we can discuss my other condition 10, which is the licensable activities to be ancillary to like restaurant use as well. So there are other safeguards in place.
Thank you.
So moving on to number 2. So number 2 and number 3, you've offered these conditions on the premise that you're granted what you've asked for. So if the committee were minded to grant, the committee would be looking to remove the words in square brackets, because otherwise, from an enforcement point of view, the officers would have to go in and ask if you're intending on serving alcohol that night, and then for the condition to kick in. So if the committee were minded to grant to the hours that you wanted, we would be looking to remove the bits in the square brackets for conditions 2 and 3. Do you have a problem with that?
Ooh, I didn't know why you put the square brackets around it. I thought, yeah, that's so I hadn't cast my mind to that. I think the point here was that if you put that on, we could actually come out in a worse position. So if Han decides, actually, on Thursdays my karaoke isn't working, so actually I'm going to stop alcohol sales at 11 o'clock, we'd end up then having the restaurant conditions imposed whilst not using the additional hours. That was my thought behind it, if I can call you
I think the
Lindsay.
converse is, if it is going ahead, then enforcement officers would have to come along and establish whether you are serving alcohol, and then the second layer would be waitress service after 8. So I think it's one versus the other. So I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
But if the officers, I think, came in at after 11:30, then we'd be for the high jump if it wasn't waitress. If they came in, I suppose what you're saying is, if they came in at 11 o'clock, Han may say, well, actually, we're not selling alcohol after 11:30 tonight, so we don't need waitress. Can I just take some instructions? Do you mind? I put this in the draft application, sent it to your licensing officers, and this wasn't raised. But if you just bear with me a second. Because Han operates in that way anyway, councillors, you can't come to the bar anyway. We'll accept that deletion of those words, councillors.
Thank you. For 2 and 3, as it's the
That's
same.
same with 3 as well.
Yeah, thank you. Did the objectors have any comments on 2 or 3? Oh, hang on, number 2, I've put for consumption by customers seated at tables, presumably in the yellow, blue, green areas. So presumably it could be tied to the yellow areas.
I think it's yellow and blue.
Yellow and blue, but not green, because green's karaoke.
Correct, yes.
That
I mean, you may well be sat down, but it's not. It's kind of a.
It's too restrictive putting the green on. Do the objectors understand what the point I'm making there is for number 2? So I've asked for condition 2. So on Thursday, so if the committee are minded to grant, on Thursdays to Saturdays, all sales of alcohol will be by way of waiter and waitress service after 8 p.m. and for consumption by customers seated in the yellow restaurant area and the blue function rooms. So it's restricting, so after 8 p.m, alcohol has got to be served in the restaurant and the function rooms by waiter-waitress service. Does anybody have any comments on that? Number 3, we've obviously covered the bits in square brackets. Are you happy with my red amendments?
The only thing I think we ought to add in is to say for consumption by such customer as an ancillary to their meal and or their participation in karaoke. So it covers both. Because they might have finished their meal and I wouldn't want them then just carrying on drinking if they weren't also taking part in karaoke. I think it just tightens it up and it reflects what we're really trying to do here.
Thank you. Objectors okay with that?
Just a query, perhaps I've misunderstood. Somebody could have a meal in the restaurant or the function room and they would have alcohol and a meal, but then if they went on to the karaoke room, would there be the requirement that they had to have a food served at that time?
If I can just address that, Councillor Wade, it's already in the conditions. You must have pre-booked the karaoke room, and I think it's in the dispersal policy that you can't just turn up on the night and use. So I can't imagine why you would book a meal in the function room and then book another meal in a karaoke room, and you couldn't do that on the night anyway, councillors. You must do it in advance. You're not going to book a function room and a karaoke room.
Can I just ask you out of interest, can you just come in just to go to the karaoke and not have a meal?
No, if you use karaoke, you've got to eat in the karaoke room. Say you've got to be given a meal. It comes back to can you force it down somebody's throat? No, but you've got to order food.
The query, I can just want to ask, you have certain seats in which are defined as restaurant. And somebody comes in for a meal and there's a karaoke room available, not booked. They say, can we book it? It is technically, they're booking it while they're sitting there. Is there the requirement to have food when they use the karaoke rooms?
I think we've restricted karaoke or bookings up to 23:30 anyway, haven't we?
It's pre-booked. You've got to have pre-booked, and you can't come along and while you're there book it. You've got to have booked it in advance.
How can we be sure that that will be enforced?
How can that enforce? Yeah, how would that be enforced?
I guess one of your officers might turn up and say, can I see your bookings, please? And then you'd see what time the booking was taken. It's like all conditions. I mean, if somebody goes down and find we're not complying with it, then we will get the enforcement action as appropriate.
Also, proposed condition 13, new customers shall not be admitted to the premises after 23:30 as well. So people can't rock up late and just go to the karaoke rooms as well. Going on to number 4, those persons consuming alcohol in the function rooms and the karaoke rooms will be, so after 23:30, will be persons who have pre-booked such rooms for private events. Yeah, so that further restricts it even more. So anyone in those rooms will be persons who've pre-booked. So that strengthens that one.
I have a question. The pre-booking will be online, or you have a book, or how does that work?
I know that because I asked Han last night. You can either book it online or you can book it by telephone.
And then it will be entered in your log.
I hope so, Councillors, yes, because when you turn up, you need to make sure you've got your booking. Yes, it will be.
Okay, thank you.
And can we take the words out in square brackets as well, just so?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to number 5, I haven't made any changes. So you've obviously you provided your dispersal policy already, which everyone's now had sight of. And you're going to serve a copy, which you have done, on the licensing authority. Will you be tweaking it, or is that the final one that you provided now?
That is the final one, Councillors. We hadn't had any comments on it before today.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that hinges on, I think this is where the dispersal policy comes in. I think that the expectation is most people will leave by cab, and we note that they're going to escort them to the cab. But also, we wanted to know what the situation, and the reason why we wanted the SIA security guard is to ensure the management of people leaving by foot actually leave the area and do not congregate in Spear Mews and Nevern Place. So that is the reason why we wanted the security guard in order.
I think there's 2 points there. I think firstly, you normally only put on a security condition if the police have requested it, which they haven't. And secondly, any issues with dispersal, you don't micromanage it by way of a condition. You just say you're going to have a dispersal policy, and obviously you're going to have residents' meetings, and if there are issues with the dispersal policy, you raise them at the residents' meeting, and then they can amend accordingly. And obviously if there are issues, you'd log it with the council, there'd be a review. That's how it would be going forward.
Yes, but this is the dispersal policy we have before us is the one that I went back to Mr. Smith saying was inadequate to protect people in local streets from people who walk away rather than people go get cabs.
Perhaps you can feed that back to the residents' meeting so they can consider amending the dispersal policy.
To be fair, it was raised by Councillor Wade. We've considered it. There's obviously a considerable cost. There's also insurance issues, actually, about having door staff working away from the front door. Had we operated the temporary event notices and there were complaints and issues around those, and we may have taken a different view, but we've had no issues raised. So you're right, Lindsay, at this stage we're not proposing to micromanage and put that into the dispersal policy as it stands. Things may change.
But obviously you take on board anything that the residents have to say.
And because if we didn't and there were issues, Councillor Wade and the other residents would raise it at a review that we'd ignored them.
So all the issues that have been raised about people hanging around Charles Place, outside the venue on Earl's Court and in Spear Mews, particularly historically when more late night establishments were around, are being ignored.
Not being ignored. Obviously you don't usually have, you have to be proportionate when you add conditions to a licence. You
well,
can't.
We had an example that Linda raised when there was an earlier nightclub. They did have security officers. How many did they have?
They had, it was a defined route which went down Nevern Place, Templeton Place, Spear Mews, and it was to ensure that people weren't sitting on the doorsteps because people come out, they've had a nice time, their voices are elevated, sometimes they've drunk too much and they use the basements as urinals. There is an impact of having a late night entertainment license at this particular, it's a very sensitive location. It is got residents immediately above, opposite and behind. I think that just saying they're not going to have a guard doesn't mean to say that they shouldn't have a guard. Even if it was for the Thursdays, Saturdays, and the late nights, to protect people. Because if they're coming out of Earls Court Road and they're just looking at that, they don't see the impact on the streets immediately in front of them and alongside them.
Perhaps the condition would be tweaked to say so it can be reviewed and obviously discussed at residents' meetings, and any review can take into account issues such as dispersal and any future need for security if considered necessary.
Certainly, councillors, yes, we have considered it, as I've said, around the temporary event notices we did, and please, we're harking back to this being a nightclub again, which we said we're not a nightclub. It's 40 people who might maximum. And bear in mind, these people will be coming out at different times because you book the karaoke times with a staggered ceasing time. Sorry, ceasing time. What an awful word. A staggered termination time, councillors. But it's obviously for you to decide whether it's proportionate to put such a condition on, councillors. I suggest it isn't at this stage.
May I say something? It seems at the moment that it's slightly paying attention to it after the horse has bolted. The residents are people who are worthwhile considering as being respectable, and their needs are, need to be taken into account. And therefore, they would feel much happier if they have got a respectable SIA security registered door supervisors for when people do leave, and seeing that their taxes are okay. After all, they only get £15 an hour, and it's not going to be very expensive for the venue to have them for a couple of hours a night on Thursday to Saturday.
That point is very well taken, and we cannot impose it because the police have not requested it. However, we can do a condition, as Lindsay suggested, that it will be considered and discussed at residents' meetings, and then we can take further action. But we're not allowed to just impose it on them.
It would be a ground for appeal if we started putting conditions on, if because obviously the problem we have here is that there's no responsible authority making a representation, environmental health or the police. So if the police had objected and suggested SIA staff, then obviously it's something that would give us the ability to add that as a condition. Environmental health have agreed to conditions. They haven't come along and said we foresee, or there has been noise issues and therefore it's likely that they will be ongoing. So we have to kind of take a measured approach to what the evidence is before us, and whatever decision the councillors make, obviously it has to be, any conditions have to be necessary, they have to be proportionate, in line with the licensing objectives, in line with the Licensing Act, the statement of licensing policy. We are restricted by those factors. So obviously if they go off-piste and start adding conditions which are too restrictive, SIA staff and do this and do that, they can go away and appeal, and then it'd be a massive process. I mean, this isn't to prejudge what the councillors are going to decide. I'm just telling you what the worst case scenario is if you start putting on restrictive conditions where we haven't got the evidence base to back it up, which is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yes.
So obviously there's the residents' meetings, and we can amend the condition for the dispersal policy to include discussing dispersal with residents and any future need, to be considered for SIA. But obviously it's not something in reality that the committee can impose if they're minded to grant.
I just wanted to raise the point that in the original licence there was a requirement to have consultation with Earls Court Village RA and the Nevern Square Conservation Area, and it was meant to be every 6 months. And so for 2.5 years we'd had no consultation, and the applicant appeared to be unaware that these were a requirement. So I think it's
that
important.
was addressed earlier on, and I think
I think it's important that the applicant is aware of the conditions that are going to be imposed.
I can safely say, councillors, I have made Han fully aware of the conditions, and my office will be setting a reminder every 6 months so he doesn't forget, Councillor Wade. We were in COVID times, but that's no excuse. There should have been a meeting called every 6 months, councillors. I acknowledge that and I apologise.
Right, moving on to number 6. You've already said that you're not going to be providing late night refreshment after 11 p.m.
Well, we are, but just not for consumption off the premises.
Okay, yes, that's correct. Like a delivery service, that's what I mean. So number 6, you're going to have you got a home delivery policy in place yet, or is that in the making?
No, we haven't. But then, actually, I don't think we need it anymore because it's not a licensable activity, is it? Because we're not doing it after 11 o'clock, so I don't think we need it.
Okay, so what condition?
Although I actually put it on myself incorrectly.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're happy to do one, and I will draft one up and send it to the council. I've done them before here for Royal Borough, Kensington and Chelsea.
Okay. Keep in.
I think the issue of home delivery is very important because, in fact, the bikes are parked outside residential properties on either side of Nevern Place. And I'm sure this is going to be part of a wider discussion that the council will have with bikes. But that does contribute to the noise and the mess that is left, and is directly related to individual businesses. If they're doing a delivery service, we'd like to see a bike delivery policy. Thank you.
You said you're happy to include it, even though you're not going to be doing late.
We'll do it anyway, councillors, even though it's not a licensable activity. Yes, correct.
Number 7, all customers who enter the premises and leave will only do so by the main entrance and exit on Earls Court Road, except in the case of an emergency. So there's 2 entrances, I believe, from looking at, and you use both entrances. Is one entrance, one exit, or are they both used at the same time?
No, there's only one entrance and exit on Earls Court Road. There's 2 fire exits onto Nevern Place, and then there's the fire exit into the service yard and then into Spear Mews. I think the concern has been expressed before, possibly that people have been allegedly leaving via Nevern Place. So to be absolutely clear that it is only via Earls Court Road people can come and go.
Sorry, when I looked on Street View, it looked as though there's 2 doors. There's just one entrance into and outside the premises.
On Earls Court Road, there's just one, yes. I'm not a local resident, but I'm sure there's just one, isn't there?
Just one entrance.
Yeah, just one.
Number 8, so you've said the kitchen extraction will be switched off by midnight, and I've asked what happens if late night refreshment goes on later.
A great question. We do have requests for food sometimes from the karaoke rooms, and it's food that we've pre-prepared and we have to microwave it, councillors. And the reason we do that is we don't want the extraction fan off on any later than midnight in the service yard.
Okay, that explains that. Okay?
Yes, I think that I think it affects Nevern Place people more, the extraction, because the extraction fan as present is actually inserted at the base of what forms a balcony serving 2 flats. So it's really important that the terminal are, but it's also very important that certain hygiene is done on the because it's very smelly and it's very...
There are conditions on the existing licence about noise, smells, vibration, so we're just focusing on the additional ones as a result if this variation is granted.
All right, but we've got to have those extraction things, because they're noisy as well, so they contribute to the noise. Yeah. And it's in a courtyard, so it echoes, so people in number 2, number 4, Spear Mews get affected, and people in number 3 and number 5, Nevern Place.
I guess the point to make, councillors, is that I've restricted it to midnight because we've already got permission to midnight. That's why you can't actually restrict it any earlier than midnight, because it's not a review. So this is a condition we put forward and offered to give some comfort that we won't be having the extractor fan on any later if we're doing late night refreshment later than midnight.
I understood the present requirement was it was turned off before midnight because it is so close to residential properties.
I don't think there's any requirements on the premises licence at the moment.
I haven't seen one on the licence, so they're choosing to put that on now. So, are you happy with that? I mean, obviously, if we look at the existing licence, there's already conditions which cover, let's have a look, in relation to this issue, no noise or vibration associated with the operation of plant, no smells generated from cooking premises to give rise to nuisance. So they would also support that. I think that's it, yeah.
Can I ask a question? How close is the extractor fan to residents' upstairs, balconies and windows?
It's about a metre. So you go from the courtyard and you've got a wall which at the top forms a balcony, and they've put in the fan.
Sorry, that has to do with planning. And
Not our extraction system anyway, it's Jollibee's.
It was about the impact.
Yeah, planning is a different issue, and you're saying that that's the extractor from Jollibee anyway. So, it doesn't matter, we're not discussing it here, it's not a licensing issue. He's already given you turning it off at midnight. You can bring it up at planning if you want.
Okay.
Right, let's move on to the next one. So these are the additional conditions which I've suggested, having read the representations made, so I've focused on what's come out. I've added a drinking up, but obviously to end after the latest permitted hours for any given day. Are you happy with that one?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you happy with number 10 saying it should be ancillary to the main function as a restaurant?
Yes, I just wondered whether we should add and karaoke. Well, I suppose it is still a restaurant mainly. Yes, I think I am, as long as we're quite clear karaoke is going on there. But I guess there's only 40 people out of 170 who could potentially be using it. So yeah, I guess so.
Thank you. Number 11, where the areas of the premises are let to individuals or groups for private event or function, you'll have a named member of staff responsible for ensuring the conditions on the licence are adhered to and obtain the details of the lead individual of the event or function in writing in advance of the event and keep such details for 31 days. Is that okay?
I think your chair's already raised that, and yes, we'll do that, correct.
Thank you. Right, number 12, customers permitted to temporarily leave and then re-enter shall be limited to, and I've put in brackets, 5 persons at any one time. Don't know if anybody's got comments on the number there.
It means get more drink.
No, I've got an observation on 12.3. We'll direct them. I think the best thing for us to do would be to direct them by way of signage. And I think it would be best to say that they will be asked to smoke outside the front of Kung Fu, councillors, would be the best place for anybody to smoke.
Thank you.
There is a fire exit which serves the 21 flats, which is immediately next door to their frontage. Think that we must make sure that people are aware and that area is monitored so you do not get congregation in the recessed area which forms the fire escape.
Not obstruct the fire exit to whatever number it is. Okay, so you're happy with limiting to 5 persons, not taking drinks or glasses outside, and if smoking, directed by signage to smoke outside, but not to obstruct the fire exit?
Yeah, the frontage of the premises and not to obstruct fire exits. I'm happy, yes. We're happy.
Thank you. Okay, number 13, I think you said you're already agreeable to this. No new customers to be admitted after 23:30.
More than happy, yes.
Litter patrols, are you happy with that?
I do have a bit of a problem with that, I'm afraid, for 2 reasons. One is we are on sales only, and although we've had the relaxation during COVID, we still don't allow any off sales. And secondly, we've already heard from Lindsay that we don't do late night refreshment off the premises, so I don't actually think that's proportionate.
Do you do litter sweeps? Because I know it often comes up at these kind of meetings that there's problems with oil on footways and rubbish from premises and other premises. I mean, as a goodwill, obviously it's a concern that often comes up.
No, I think I had this issue on another application. We're not a fast food takeaway premises. I really don't think it's appropriate, personally, councillors. And I'd hate to somebody to come along and say, can we see your litter patrols that you're doing twice a day? We don't do, and I'm not sure proportionately, actually, you could do that if we're not providing late night refreshment, Lindsay, anyway, after 2300, and we can't sell alcohol off the premises. I don't think it's proportionate or correct.
Okay, so you don't currently do litter sweeps at all, though?
No.
No, currently. Right, well, councillors will take a view on that. I just need to double check whether the litter's been raised as an actual issue. I mean, presumably, like you say, there's no takeaways as... You do deliveries during the day, though, don't you? I mean, obviously, that's part of the...
Yeah, but it's not licensable, is it?
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Okay, we'll take a view on that one.
Hello. Just on that note, it may not be licensable. However, obviously things go wrong, things can spill, something can get messy. Just as a goodwill, because you do actually do sort of deliveries even during the day within certain times, could you adhere to some kind of just speculation, sweeping, just to check outside would be helpful?
I'll tell you what, councillors, it might be the best way to do this. I'll include it in the delivery policy. That will make sure that the frontage is kept clear to ensure that any mess from any deliveries is kept clear. That's perhaps the best way to deal with it, councillors.
Kept clear and clean.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to ask you, with regard to your neighboring Jolly, what's it called?
Jolly Bee.
Jolly Bee, are you actually next door to each other?
Yes, they are next door to us, yes.
So I was just wondering, at any points during the night, is there an issue? Yeah, that's what I thought. But is there an intermingling of crowds, or do you have any issues that aren't not attributable to your premises, but come from Jolly Bee, just for clarification?
Jollibees, it appears, only has a licence to 11 o'clock, actually, councillors, so they would have shut much before us in terms of what you're considering today. So there shouldn't be any interaction. We haven't experienced any problems. There's been no police issues or call-outs to the customers intermingling, no, and it does shut at 11 o'clock, according to the register, councillors.
But they can conceivably, since it closes at 11, totally... along with the policy we're discussing, they could then, if they had previously booked, move on to your premises. Is that correct?
Is it a takeaway? Potentially it could, yes. You could come in at 11:30 potentially, councillors. It'd be rather late, and we don't tend to do bookings for karaoke that late, councillors. But you could, but you'd have to have pre-booked in advance, of course.
Okay, thank you.
And can I just check, so looking from the street view, is that doorway in the recess, is that the fire exit to the flats above? It's a what, sorry? A grey door.
It's a grey door if you, yeah.
But that's just sorry, this is just something that we've got between us. It's just a street view. So I was looking on Google Maps just to get an idea of what the premises looks like. It's just under the signage. It comes under where it says Kung Fu, and you've got the main door, then there's like a recessed... Sorry?
Jollibee and...
Sorry. Perhaps the governance, can you just... Yeah. Perhaps the governance
Sorry,
can show the picture. It's, you do that side and I'll do... Oh, okay. Whatever. I just wanted to be clear, that's all. Yeah, that's what I wanted clarity on, because I was thinking there was 2 entrances to the restaurant, so no, fine. Fire exit, thank you. That's all I wanted to get clarity on. Thank you. Lovely. Okay, number 15. I know the Fire Authority haven't made a representation, and normally we'd only put such a condition on because they've requested it, but you've mentioned numbers in your dispersal policy, and I think it's 172, isn't it, all told? Are you happy to have that on there?
That doesn't include staff.
No.
So I guess either 172 excluding staff, or having spoken to Han about this, 190 including staff. 18 staff.
Okay.
They do have quite a big kitchen, councillor, so they do need quite a lot of staff.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, clarification. After, with the licence extension, would that be the whole full 172 or only the people in the karaoke rooms?
I think there's 72 after. Is it 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock?
So it's 172 in total, not just in the karaoke rooms. No, that's in the total premises.
But after midnight, it would just be the people in the karaoke rooms?
So after midnight, if this application were to be granted, it would be the people in the function rooms and the karaoke rooms. They would be the limited number. Oh no, there's an extension to the restaurant as well. The hours are in the application.
So it could be 72. 172.
After, is it 12? After the restaurants close, the yellow areas, it will be 72.
Yeah, correct, in the function room and the karaoke rooms.
But the licence goes
Till 2 a.m. So it could be 72 people coming out at that time.
I think we dealt with this, we've said before that the rooms, the terminal hour for the karaoke rooms are staggered, so you don't have them all closing at the same time. That's the idea. So you book a room, but they don't all stop at 2 o'clock, so you'd have one stopping at 2, one at every 15 minutes incrementally they would stop, so it wouldn't be everybody.
I'm asking because the karaoke rooms are, I think they add up to 32, so it must be about 40 in the function room.
No, it's the other way round. I think it's about 30 for the function rooms and 40 for the karaokes.
And the foyer can hold all the people for the taxis when they come out of the function room.
So yes, we estimate probably 50% would get cabs, we suggest, and bear in mind they won't all be leaving at the same time.
I would also like to add that the all-night tube, which is just nearby, will be running as well.
I wasn't aware of that, councillor, sorry.
Sorry?
I wasn't aware of that, sorry, councillor.
Yes.
I didn't appreciate it was going right through the night.
Yeah, I think the Jubilee line certainly runs at the weekends all night, I believe. One of the lines, I believe, runs... Is it the Piccadilly line? So what,
I think it's the Piccadilly line, which is, again, underlines a requirement for a more effective dispersal policy external to the
Right, so I think the extra conditions we've kind of discussed during this hearing, you've agreed to no late night refreshment after 2300 outdoors.
It's for provision outdoors, yeah.
Yeah. And you said something about giving a mobile number, or...
That's actually in the dispersal policy.
Oh, in the dispersal, okay, in dispersal policy. Right, have there been any other issues which you think should be conditioned for this discussion? Councillor Wade?
Yes, I would like a couple of conditions. Each fire exit should be checked, cleared and cleaned every day at the end of service at night. before they start operating, and then at the end of the service, because we do have a historic issue with the area underneath the nail bar, where we have, unfortunately, rough sleepers, cracked people and furniture, which blocks the primary exit from the basement. And the other one is that we would ask for that the area external to their frontage and the area that they cover from 1 to 5 Nevin Place, their basements, and the pavement is kept clear and clean, ideally by washing with degreasing outside the frontage.
I think we've already discussed litter sweep and cleaning, and I think that's been covered earlier on.
No, but I think we've got to, because you have a high level of oils being essential part of the cooking, it's essential that the area is actually degreased, and that the basements, because there's one basement in dispute, but I think there are 2 which directly are related to the business, and they should be kept clear of litter and cleaned and swept.
Right, perhaps the applicant can have some feedback on that.
Well, we're getting into fire safety issues. The complaints, you'll see the complaint was referred to the fire officer, no further report, there's no objection from the fire officer, and what Councillor Wade's asking for should by law be covered in fire risk assessments, councillors, and I think we're at risk of duplicating legislation which is covered by the fire safety order, councillors. We're getting into things that weren't raised in any representation.
And you've already done the fire risk assessment anyway?
Yes, and that's been provided to Councillor Wade as well.
I'd like to just comment on, I think, Ms. Fawcett, you mentioned, was it you or Ms. Seabohm who mentioned the mobile number? That is common procedure, because you need to be able to call the premises. And so they don't have your numbers unless it's for other reasons, but you will be able to call the designated supervisor, and that's always very handy.
It is very handy. My comment was, really, you shouldn't run a business that requires us to call.
I think there's existing condition 16, which also requires there to be a dedicated telephone number as well.
I think there is already one. It's going to be in the dispersal policy, and it is good practice. I think the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea do like this as good practice on conditions.
Yes, we require it in many premises.
I'd like to comment on a particular fire exit, the first one, that is facing Nevin Place. I've taken many photographs of it previously and forwarded to Councillor Wade. That used to be a favourite hangout for people smoking crack. All hours, often during the day, and sometimes it's blocked by furniture. I've also forwarded photographs to Councillor Wade on that score. So I think it must be a responsibility of the business to make sure that is not occupied as a crack den, that involves congregations of street life, and also, at one point it was blocked completely. Furniture downstairs.
Has this been reported to?
There was furniture blocking the fire exit completely for several days, and right down into the basement, blocking the fire exit door. So I'm not making this up, and it should be a responsibility of the premises to business to make sure it's clear at all times and it doesn't become a hangout for street life smoking crack, okay?
Already under condition 12 that there was agreement not to obstruct the fire exit anyway, so I think we've covered that already. And obviously there's the separate regimes. Obviously we're focusing on the Licensing Act, and there are additional regimes, and the Fire Authority, they've got powers as well. So we need to kind of keep it within the confines of the licensing regime. So we have added that onto the condition 12 about not obstructing fire exits.
On the accessibility of the mobile phone number, I notice it doesn't include the Earls Court Village RA or Navan Square Conservation RA.
Talking about existing condition 16, or are you talking about what's proposed? Can you point to where you're referring? Number 17 is talking about meeting for local residents and residents associations, so I would have thought that would be caught by that. And perhaps the applicant could just make sure that they include, sorry, which residents association did you say?
The original residents' associations they were supposed to consult, Earls Court Village RA and the Nevern Square Conservation Area RA.
Can you make sure they're included?
I have
in your
them all on a
future?
group email with 22 other residents associations. I keep getting emails back saying we don't cover this area there, but yes, I'll make sure Councillor Wade they're all notified.
Thank you. Right, I don't have any more conditions. Does anybody else, or are we done?
I think, do you have anything to say, governing officers?
Nothing from us at the moment, thank you, Chair. I think everything was covered.
Okay, and our licensing officer?
Nothing has come up from my point of view, thank you, Chair.
So thank you. We've reached the end of this meeting, and I thank you all for your participation. It's been very helpful and collaborative, which is what we would like to do. The committee now has all the information that we need, and we will retire to make our decision in private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, we will retire to make our decision, and the hearing will be closed. A summary determination will be sent to the parties within 5 working days, and a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. The time limit for appealing the decision will not commence until the full decision has been sent to the parties. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much.